Welcome to the Eye Opener. I'm your host, Michael Lewis. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis said he will defend parents' rights to speak out against policies they don't agree with in their children's schools. A teacher creates a guide for parents and other teachers to recognize when CRT is being introduced to their school system. It's definite. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller will face a court-martial. And we end today's episode with a look at the CCP's global agenda. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. After the Justice Department announced on Monday it would instruct the FBI to mobilize against parents who allegedly threatened teachers and school board members, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced Tuesday that the state will fight the DOJ's effort to silence parents at school board meetings. DeSantis tweeted, "Attorney General Garland is weaponizing the DOJ by using the FBI to pursue concerned parents and silence them through intimidation. Florida would defend the free speech rights of its citizens and will not allow federal agents to squelch dissent." However, disagreement is not harassment. Protest is not terrorism unless it involves rioting, looting, and assault, like some of the left-wing protests of the summer of 2020. Again, all of those actions are crimes in Florida and will be prosecuted regardless of political context, DeSantis' office said in a statement on October 6th. The statement continued that Florida law already prohibits harassment of teachers, while adding that Florida's law enforcement is perfectly capable of responding to criminal behavior in Florida, and we have never heard otherwise from the FBI. In the past year, parents have appeared at their children's school board meetings to push back against the school's mask mandate and critical race theory. The DOJ announcement also did not specify whether threats against teachers and staff are widespread. Congressional lawmakers sharply criticized the department and Garland's directive, arguing that the Biden administration was trying to silence dissenting views. In a letter to the DOJ, Representative Ken Buck wrote, "More engagement from parents who are concerned about what their children are being taught does not give rise to a federal crime. In fact, there appears to be no federal nexus sufficient to justify the directives outlined in your memorandum and your decision to direct federal law enforcement resources to confront parents who oppose the views of the Biden administration and its socialist agenda. Your memorandum is a politically motivated abuse of power and displays a lack of reasoned, sound judgment." Despite receiving tax relief through the Coronavirus Assistance Relief and Economic Security Act, also known as CARES Act, some of the nation's top utility providers cut off power to customers across the country, according to a new report. In September, the Center for Biological Diversity's Energy Justice Program and Bailout Watch released its Powerless in a Pandemic report that found the nation's top utilities collectively received $1.25 billion from last year's government bailout, allowing them to grant temporary relief to customers. Under the 2020 $2.2 trillion economic stimulus bill, companies in the energy sector were able to receive a hefty tax bailout if they were at risk of an economic hit from the pandemic. But the opposite is true. Top providers continue to shut off electricity service to homes nearly 1 million times. The center found between February 2020 and June 2021 alone, 16 suppliers suspended or canceled electricity services to nearly 1 million homes, leaving people without access to hot water and other utilities and forcing some to move. Oliver Owens, a Detroit-based producer and entrepreneur, saw his income drop and bills rise when the pandemic hit and the music studios around him closed. By late April, he was facing a $243 debt on his electricity bill when DTE Energy, Michigan's largest utility, cut the power to his townhouse, leaving him feeling so stressed that he had to seek help from his family and local nonprofits. This year, DTE cut off power for thousands of people like Owen, despite receiving $220 million bailout through a CARES Act tax change during the pandemic. The report highlights the most flagrant offenders are Next Era Energy, parent of Florida Power and Light, Duke Energy, and DTE Energy, which are behind about 94% of the record outages. Next Era alone accounted for nearly half of the closures. These companies have received enough money to forgive the debts of their customers, yet many are handing out executive bonuses and increasing shareholder dividends. In the past 2 years, DTE has raised investor compensation from around $710 million to nearly $800 million, while its CEO received a $2 million plus raise in 2020. Lobbying records show that companies also sent lobbyists to secure favorable CARES Act tax law changes while opposing legislation to protect struggling customers. Next Era received more than $40 million in CARES Act benefits, but spent $5.6 million lobbying against consumer protections. Director of the Center for Biological Diversity's Energy Justice Program, Jean Su, said this greedy, heartless practice hurts low-wealth communities and communities of color most of all. It needs to stop. Complicit state regulators who fail to make shutoff data public should stop cowering and start shedding light on utilities' bad behavior. A teacher who quit her job in California and moved to Florida because of what she saw as political indoctrination of students and staff assisted in writing a guide to help educators discover critical race theory in their class curriculums. The Blexit Foundation launched the new guide developed by Callie Fontanilla to its 35 chapters across the United States on October 4th. Pierre Wilson, the organization's national director, said, "Liberal cities, especially those with large minority populations, are actively advocating for CRT based on Marxist themes to be taught in American classrooms." He added, "This is an attack on all America," and then continued, "They're pushing it extremely hard right now, so we felt it was something that we had to respond to right away." Fontanilla taught for around 15 years in California. She decided to leave her teaching position at Rancho San Juan High School in Salinas after being threatened and bullied on social media for opposing CRT components in the Ethnic Studies program and denouncing the BLM. She was chosen by Blexit as the guide's lead editor because of her strong teaching background. The guide is designed for teachers across the country to help students see beyond the narrow, hyper-race-focused lens of CRT. Fontanilla said, "It's a guide for parents and teachers on how to spot it, what to do if they're forced to teach it, what it is, because a lot of people don't know what critical race theory is and all of the key terms that are in it." The Blexit Guide includes lessons to counter CRT, including equity versus equality, and understanding the Quakers and their struggle to abolish slavery. It shows teachers how to instruct students and help them think critically about CRT, rather than just brainwashing them into going along with these narratives that America is super racist and every institution either oppresses them or benefits their oppressors, Fontanelli said. Now, CRT has had a makeover and is proliferating everywhere, she said. Terms like privilege, intersectionality, hegemony, dominant ideology, and decolonization, and even diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the 4 I's of oppression, ideological, institutional, interpersonal, and internal, are just CRT rebranded. The guide can help educators discover critical race theory in the classroom. Pierre Wilson said, "CRT is a political position that is now being pushed into our schools. I'm Black, and I don't feel oppressed. I don't feel there is systematic racism in our country. We want to be celebrated because we work hard. We want to be celebrated because we gave our all, not because we received a handout or we were treated like victims." That's what Blexit is all about. We are all victors, not victims. Wilson also talked about the children growing up who don't even recognize race, like Black and white girls who play together and don't see anything negative. But now, they are forced to look at each other differently because someone said that one color is the oppressor and the other is the oppressed. We're teaching them anger, hatred, division, and we're saying we're doing this in the name of love, but we're not, he added. If CRT supporters really want everyone to know the true history, they should tell people that white people weren't the only ones who owned slaves, not to mention that it was white people who helped free the slaves, Wilson said. Despite CRT being camouflaged, we can still identify it as a new variant of communism. The history of communism around the world proves that the basic consciousness of communist doctrine is hatred. And hatred does not need a reason. And even if there is no hatred, communism has to create it. And this is the reason why CRT is now being pushed in America. And coming up, Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller will face court-martial. And the CCP has a strategy to expand its global influence and rule the world. But before we continue, I just want to stress how important it is as the viewer to help us get the truth out to as many people as possible. Please take the time to like this video and share it across all your social media. Also, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell so that you can be notified every time we post a new video. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support. Okay, let's get back to the show. Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller has been charged with 6 violations and will face trial by court-martial on October 14th for publicly criticizing the chaotic Afghanistan withdrawal. He was 3 days from retirement when he was stripped of his post and thrown into pretrial detention. According to the Army Times, he has been charged with Article 88, contempt towards officials, Article 89, disrespect towards superior commissioned officers, Article 90, willfully disobeying a superior commissioned officer, Article 92, dereliction in the performance of duties, Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation, and Article 133, conduct unbecoming an officer and a gentleman. Numerous lawmakers in Scheller's family have spoken out against what they view as political persecution against the Marine veteran. This confinement appears to be simply for messaging, retribution, and convenience in flagrant violation of IRSEM, Rule for Court-Martial. A person should not be confined as a mere matter of convenience, reads a September 29th letter from 35 members of Congress calling for Scheller's release. He's an American war hero. He has fought for his men and women that follow him. He's fought on the battlefield for them. I believe he has risked his life for his fellow service people and Americans. He is now risking his livelihood for them. He saw a misjustice happening at the top, and he felt that they should be held accountable for it, Stewart's mother said. The Institute for Strategic Studies of Military Schools, IRSEM, a military academy under the French Ministry of Defense, released a report titled Chinese Influence Operations, a Machiavellian Moment. It reveals the little-known secrets of the Chinese Communist Army's 3 warfares. The report's content is significant. It details the global network used by the Chinese Communist Party in recent years to expand its influence in 4 areas. The team's general director specifically avoided all pro-communist scholars, sinologists, research institutions, and politicians throughout investigation, and finally appointed Jean-Baptiste Jean-Jean Villemur, director of the French Military Academy School of Strategic Studies, and Paul Charon, an expert on intelligence in China, to co-author the report. The 3 warfares include psychological warfare, public opinion warfare, and legal warfare. The 3 warfares doctrine is relatively unknown in the West. The concepts serve as crucial strategies guiding the CCP in its quest to win a war against the free world without firing a single shot. Psychological warfare works to demoralize the enemy. Public opinion warfare pursues shaping the hearts and minds of the masses, and legal warfare uses systems of law to deter enemy attacks. In the report, IRSEM stated that the 3 warfare strategy is one of the main platforms of the CCP Army, and it constitutes the crux of the CCP's political warfare, the core concept of non-forceful means of confrontation to achieve its goals. Political warfare is a non-contact conflict used during wartime or peace. Combined with another key CCP doctrine called United Front work, these principles have underpinned a campaign by the CCP to expand its influence and infiltration into Western democracies, the report stated. Guided by such strategies, the CCP has built a sprawling infrastructure with a global reach that consists of a broad network of state and non-state actors to carry out its plans. According to IRSEM, the CCP's influence operations abroad have 2 main objectives: to seduce and subjugate foreign audience by creating a positive narrative about China, and above all, to infiltrate and coerce. Former Assistant Secretary of State David Stilwell said in 2020 that while some United Front organizations publicly state their affiliation with the CCP, most try to present themselves as independent, grassroots types NGOs, cultural exchange forums, friendship associations, chambers of commerce, media outlets, or academic groups. A 2020 investigation by Newsweek found that about 600 of these groups are already in the United States. One of those groups highlighted in the report is the China-United States Exchange Foundation, CUSEF. CUSEF is a Hong Kong-based nonprofit headed by a billionaire and CCP official, Tung Chee-hwa. It bills itself as an independent group working to provide U.S.-China dialogue and exchange. But in reality, it functions as a de facto front organization for the CCP, the report stated, citing the findings from a 2020 study by the Jamestown Foundation, a Washington-based think tank. CUSEF partners include Johns Hopkins University, the East-West Institute, the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, the Atlantic Council, and the Brookings Institution. The group also sponsors many high-level meetings between CCP officials and U.S. military and political figures. It has organized trips to China for more than 120 journalists from almost 50 U.S. media outlets since 2009. From 2009 to 2017, CUSEF also hosted a range of dinners and meetings with executives and editors from 35 outlets, including Time Magazine, The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, The New York Times, The Associated Press, and Reuters. What is striking about this report is two things. First, the investigation team was very clear when it released the report that the report exposes the CCP, not China. Second, the report argues that the CCP's expansion strategy is undergoing a major change, from working to win the world's affection to making the world afraid, which has been called the Machiavelli moment and the Russification of the CCP. And that's it for today, my friends. Check out the playlist right here for more eye-opening content. You can join me in the Eye Opener Telegram chat room and follow me on Newmaker, Gab, Parler, and Getter. And don't forget, please sign up to the email list so we can stay in touch. I'd like to thank you all, and I'll see you next time.